He died before he was born. He wept before he could speak. And when he rose from death, the world was never the same again. They call him the god of wine, but wine is just the doorway. Beyond the sweet intoxication lurks something ancient and wild. He doesn't walk, he dances. He doesn't speak, he sings. He screams, he seduces. And when he arrives, he brings more than joy. He brings frenzy, ecstasy, ruin. Behind the smile, there's madness. Behind the beauty, there's fury. And behind the God, there's a truth most mortals were never meant to see. This is not just a god. This is chaos wrapped in divinity, madness dressed as music, salvation disguised as sin. Today, you'll discover the terrifying truth about Dionysus, the god who brought joy and tore cities apart. The divine birth and death. Before the world knew his name, before the vineyards bled their sweet wine, there was a woman, a mortal woman. Her name was Semele. She was radiant, not just in beauty, but in soul. And somehow her light reached Olympus. It reached him, Zeus, king of gods, ruler of skies, and now a lover drawn to a mortal flame. Their union was forbidden, but irresistible. Zeus disguised himself in mortal form, visiting Semele under the veil of night. Whispers, caresses, thunder hidden inside a man's voice. But the heavens are never silent, and Hera, the queen of gods, the jealous wife, watched from the shadows. She saw the seed of betrayal growing, and she would not let it bloom. Disguised as an old woman, Hera visited the pregnant Semele. She sowed doubt like a serpent. Are you sure your lover is truly Zeus? Would a god hide from you? If he really loves you, make him show you his divine form. And so the trap was set. That night, when Zeus returned, Semele made her request. She begged him to reveal himself, not as a man, but as a god. Zeus froze. He knew the truth. No mortal can look upon a god's true form and live. But he had sworn an oath, and oaths among gods are chains stronger than Olympus. He revealed himself in all his celestial glory, lightning in every pore, fire in every breath. Semele saw, and Semele burned. She died in an instant, consumed by divine radiance. But in that inferno, a miracle cried out. The child, Dionysus, he was not yet born, but his heart beat with godhood. His soul pulsed with purpose. Zeus, stricken by grief and love, did something no god had ever done. He reached into the ashes of the woman he loved, and from her dying body he pulled the child. Not ready for the world, not ready for Olympus, but too divine to die. With nowhere else to hold him, Zeus tore open his own thigh and stitched the unborn Dionysus into his flesh, a womb of thunder, a cradle of pain. There, the child grew again, not in a mother's womb, but in the body of a god. And when the time came, he was born again, not from a woman, but from a wound. Twice born, once from a mortal's love, once from a god's suffering. No other god shares this story. No other being bridges life and death so intimately. This is the core of Dionysus. This is where his chaos begins. He is not simply Devarin. He is torn between two worlds, half man, half god, half joy, half tragedy. His very birth was a resurrection. His first breath, a defiance of death. From the beginning he carried paradox in his veins, the light of Olympus, the shadow of the underworld. And so he walks the line between them, forever marked are the flame that took his mother, forever cradled by the wound of Zeus himself. While other gods were sculpted from marble ideals, Dionysus was forged in contradiction. He is the only Olympian who truly understands mortality, because he died before he lived, and he rose before the world knew his name. This is the true beginning of the god of wine, not with laughter, but with ash, not with music, but with screams. And yet, from that pain was born a joy deeper than any other, not the shallow joy of comfort, but the profound ecstasy of survival, of rebirth. That is Dionysus, the god who bleeds, the god who remembers, the god who lives because death tried and failed to keep him.
The hidden childhood among drunks and beasts. A god rejected, raised in exile, forged by wilderness and wonder. He was born not into glory, but into fear. From the moment Dionysus emerged from Zeus's thigh, his life was a threat to Olympus. Not because he sought war, but because he defied definition. He was too mortal for the gods, too divine for the earth. A child who carried two truths in one fragile body. And so, the gods whispered, and Hera roared. She had already killed his mother. Now she would erase the child. She would not share Olympus with the living echo of her husband's betrayal. But Zeus would not risk him again. He did what few gods dared to do. He hid his son. Dionysus was sent far from Olympus, into the folds of the mortal world, deep into the forests where myth and reality still kissed. There, unseen by the thrones of power, he was raised in secret, among those untouched by law or logic. The nymphs of Mount Nysa became his mothers, creatures of water and wind. They bathed him in dew and sang him lullabies older than the stars. They did not fear his strangeness. They danced with it. Silenus, the old satyr, drunken and wise, became his tutor and protector. He was half man, half beast, fully intoxicated, a walking contradiction. Just like the boy. Together they wandered the wild. Together they taught each other joy and madness. This was no childhood of golden temples, no schooling among marble columns. Dionysus grew up where the vines crept like veins across the earth, where wolves howled prayers to the moon, where wine fermented in the open air and laughter echoed like thunder in the trees. From his earliest steps, the world bent around him. Where he walked, grapes sprouted from dust. Where he wept, flowers bloomed with faces. Where he sang, men forgot their names. Even as a child, Dionysus carried power that gods envied, but it was a power born not of command, but of release. He did not dominate the world. He made it unravel, open, surrender. But Hera's wrath was not so easily escaped. No matter how deep into the forest he wandered, she found him. And when she did, she unleashed madness. She drove him insane. She scattered his identity like petals in a storm. He forgot who he was. He became a wanderer, a refugee in his own skin. Across the world he fled Phrygia, Lydia, India. He passed through lands as both man and myth, a shapeshifter in every village. Sometimes a boy, sometimes a god, sometimes a ghost. Yet in every place, his presence awakened something primal. The vines grew wild. The women danced, the animals bowed, and the people whispered, "He is not like the others. He brings something more." They didn't have a name for him, but they followed. His joy was infectious, his sorrow was sacred, and from his chaos, new cults began to bloom. But Dionysus was still running from Hera, from Olympus, from himself. He was a god forged not in celebration, but in isolation. And yet, in this very solitude, he became unstoppable. Because in the wilderness, where beasts howled and wine spilled, he discovered the truth. He didn't need Olympus. He didn't need permission. He didn't even need memory. His power lived in the body, in instinct, in ecstasy, in every trembling moment where the soul forgets its cage. That was his temple, and it could never be burned. He was raised among the rejected, the drunk, the broken, the wild, and they became his army, not of swords, but of celebration. And so, Dionysus emerged from the shadows not as a boy, but something the gods had never seen, a deity born of pain, but raised by pleasure, rejected by Olympus, but embraced by the earth. And he was no longer hiding. He was coming. The god who defies all limits, the power of Dionysus. Intense, frenetic, sacred, and terrifying, a god of both ecstasy and annihilation. He returned from exile not with armies, but with drums, not with swords, but with wine, and fire in his eyes. Dionysus did not knock on Olympus's gates. He walked right past them. He didn't ask for a throne. He took the world itself as his stage. His power was not thunder, not sea, not war. It was transformation. He was the god of what happens when the mask falls, when the veil tears, when the spirit slips out of the cage of control and dances naked beneath the stars. He was the god of wine, but wine was just the gateway. Through it came madness, pleasure, ecstasy, freedom.
He didn't rule from a distance. He entered the body, possessed it, freed it. And in doing so, he revealed the truth. We are all divine and all feral. His rites were not ceremonies, they were awakenings. The forest became his temple, the night became his altar, and those who followed him, his maenads or bacchae, were no ordinary worshippers. They were women, once bound by duty, fear, and silence, now possessed by the god himself. They danced in circles until time dissolved. They sang until their voices became storms. They drank until reality melted into visions. And when their ecstasy reached its peak, when the barrier between flesh and spirit collapsed, they could do the impossible. They tore animals, and sometimes men, limb from limb, not out of hatred, but in divine frenzy. To outsiders, they looked mad. To themselves, they were free. Dionysus did not teach balance. He taught release. He offered no middle ground. Either you surrendered or you shattered. He could bless your land with fertile vines one day and strike it barren the next. He could kiss you into bliss or drive you into screaming madness. This was not cruelty. This was his truth. The soul cannot be caged, and if you try, it will break everything to escape. Unlike other gods, Dionysus didn't demand temples of stone. He built temples of experience,
Wherever people gathered, wherever hearts beat faster, wherever the mind dissolved into music, he was there. He didn't want obedience, he wanted transformation. And through him, mortals discovered a sacred chaos that no law, no king, no god could contain. Even the boundaries of identity were nothing to him. He was man and woman, gentle and furious, laughing and weeping. He wore makeup and ivy. He carried a staff, the thyrsus, wrapped in vine and tipped with pine, a symbol of pleasure and danger. He traveled not on a golden chariot, but with tigers, panthers, satyrs, and nymphs, a moving storm of wildness and joy. And wherever he went, kingdoms trembled, not because he was evil, but because he could not be controlled. His power was not to rule, but to unravel, to dissolve masks, to strip bare the human soul. And yet, there was something holy in the chaos, a strange kind of sacred in the surrender. For in that madness, there was healing. In that frenzy, there was truth. He showed mortals that joy and pain are twins, that madness and clarity walk hand in hand, that to truly live, one must first be willing to let go. Dionysus was the god of the in-between, of the moment just before the kiss, just before the scream, just before the fall. He was not meant to be understood. He was meant to be felt. And once you felt him, you were never the same. Those who reject him and those who pay the price. Dark, divine, and merciless, Dionysus does not ask for worship. He demands recognition. You can laugh at other gods. You can forget their names, ignore their temples, mock their myths, but not Dionysus. You don't deny Dionysus without consequences, because Dionysus isn't just a god. He's a force. He's the boundary between sanity and collapse, and he lives in the moment that line is crossed. His punishment isn't delivered with lightning bolts or floods. It arrives inside you, slowly, silently, until your mind cracks like dry earth beneath a dancing heel. Ask Pentheus, the king of Thebes. He thought he could ban Dionysus. He made laws against the wine, the rituals, the wild music spilling from the woods. He called it filth, corruption, madness infecting his city. And when rumors spread that Dionysus himself had come to Thebes, disguised as a mortal priest, gentle-voiced and ivy-crowned, Pentheus had him arrested. A god, in chains. The court mocked him, called him soft, called him feminine, unworthy of worship. But Dionysus smiled. He always smiles before the fall. That night the chains melted like smoke. The walls of the prison crumbled without touch, and the city of Thebes, stone by stone, soul by soul, fell under the trance. Women, mothers, daughters, noble wives left their homes, left their children, left their names. They ran to the forests, to the mountains, to Dionysus.
And there, under his spell, they became something else. They became Maenads, possessed by divine madness. No longer women, no longer human. They danced barefoot through thorns without bleeding, suckled fawns, tore lions apart with their hands. Pentheus followed them, not as a king, but as a voyeur, curious, enraged, drawn by a power he couldn't understand. Dionysus offered him a chance. "Dress as a woman," he said. "Hide among them. See what you fear." And Pentheus obeyed. He donned the dress, the earrings, the long curls, and climbed a tree to watch. But Dionysus had no mercy for kings who mocked the divine. In the frenzy below, the Maenads looked up. They saw Pentheus, but not as their ruler. They saw prey, an intruder, a threat. And among them was his own mother. She saw not her son, but a wild beast, a monster hiding in a tree. With bare hands, she dragged him down, and she, along with the others, tore him apart, limb by limb, laughing, crying, howling, until only his head remained. And when the trance faded, when the wine and God had passed, she awoke, holding the skull of her son in her hands, thinking it a trophy from the hunt. That is the price of denying Dionysus. Not death, madness. Not punishment, transformation. He does not strike you from above. He pulls you inward, into yourself, until you collapse under the weight of your own refusal. And Pentheus wasn't the only one. Time after time, city after city, those who mocked his rights, those who branded him a fraud, those who tried to contain what was never meant to be caged, they shattered. Because Dionysus doesn't negotiate, he doesn't argue, he doesn't ask. He enters, and once he does, he rewrites everything. He is the smile before the scream, the silence before the collapse, the sweetness before the poison blooms. He offers joy, but if you reject him, he becomes your undoing. A divine reckoning wrapped in perfume and petals, mask and wine, beauty and terror. To love Dionysus is to be broken open. To reject him is to be broken beyond recognition. The theater, the art, and the liberation. Reverent, spiritual, and emotional. Dionysus as the divine force behind expression, transformation, and truth. Before the curtain, before the stage, before actors donned masks to play kings and fools, there was Dionysus. He was not only worshipped in forests, but in theaters. Temples carved into stone, open to the sky, where thousands gathered not to watch stories, but to live them. To the Greeks, art was not entertainment. It was ritual. And Dionysus was the god of that sacred illusion. Every drama, every comedy, every myth spoken aloud was offered to him. Because he knew what the other gods didn't. The soul needs to bleed to be free. And that's what the theater was. Not a show, but a sacrifice. The masks were not to hide, they were to reveal. When a man played Oedipus and tore out his eyes, he wasn't just acting, he was walking blind into his own truth. And the audience, they weren't spectators, they wept, they shook, they remembered. Because through Dionysus, the Greeks faced what they couldn't in daylight: desire, violence, madness, fate. He made it safe to scream, to mourn, to laugh so hard it hurt. The theater was a temple, but not of order, of release. Here, Dionysus revealed his most delicate power. He healed not through control, but through chaos. A chaos that lets you feel what's buried. a chaos that turns silence into music, that takes grief and stretches it into beauty. He didn't just inspire artists, he possessed them. Poets whispered his name before writing. Actors invoked him before stepping onto the stage. Musicians plucked strings like veins, hoping he would sing through them. Even the structure of plays followed his path. First order, then conflict, then ecstasy, breakdown, transformation.
Dionysus wasn't just in the content, he was in the rhythm, the breath between words, the shiver before the climax, because art is a mirror, and he is what stares back. Through him, mortals could confront what they feared, the lust they buried, the rage they denied, the love they never spoke aloud. And by stepping into those truths, they were liberated. This was his greatest gift. Not wine, not frenzy, but permission. Permission to feel too much, to break apart, to rebuild, to be 1,000 selves in one lifetime. In the chorus of tragedy, he was every voice. In the flicker of comedy, he was every tear hidden inside the laugh. Dionysus blurred the line between the actor and the role, the audience and the divine. He reminded us, we are all pretending, and we are all real at the same time. Even today, his fingerprints remain on every stage, in every scream that becomes poetry, in every dance that turns sorrow into light. Because Dionysus lives wherever art dares to tell the truth. He is not the god of perfection, he is the god of expression. Not of statues frozen in ideal, but of bodies in motion, voices breaking, souls spilling into stories. He is the pulse behind the performance, the breath behind the brushstroke, the silence between the lines. And in a world that begs for masks, he teaches us the sacred act of removing them. Dionysus is not just worshipped in temples. He is summoned every time someone dares to say, "This is who I really am." Legacy and mysteries. Eternal, symbolic, mythical. Dionysus as the living bridge between life and death, ecstasy and spirit, body and soul. He was never meant to fade. While the other gods turned to myths, carved in marble and locked in time, Dionysus remained. He slipped past the cages of temples, past the scrolls of scholars, past the ruins of civilizations, and sank deep into the roots of memory. Because Dionysus was never just a god, he was a key to something older than Olympus, something buried inside every human being. And those who knew this truth, they kept it alive. In hidden valleys, by torchlight, in whisper and rhythm, they formed the Dionysian mysteries. Not open to all, not spoken in daylight. These were rituals of rebirth, of descent, of transcendence. They believed Dionysus held the power not only over wine and ecstasy, but over death itself. He had been born from flame, had died before his time, had wandered through madness, and returned. That return made him more than divine. It made him a guide, a companion for the soul in its darkest passage, a light in the underworld, a god who did not fear the grave because he had danced in it. Those who followed his mysteries did not worship him out of fear. They sought him out of yearning. They wanted to go where he had gone, to cross the veil, to taste the eternal, not after death, but within life. The rituals were secret, intimate, filled with music, masks, wine, and trance, but beneath the sensual veil lay something profound, a belief that within madness is clarity, within surrender is awakening, within ecstasy is truth. Dionysus was the god of the threshold, between man and God, life and death, reality and dream. And so his legacy outlived empires. Even as the Greek world crumbled, even as new gods rose and fell, he transformed. The Romans called him Bacchus, and still he reigned. Artists painted him in secret codes. Poets sang his name beneath layers of metaphor. He slipped into Christian echoes, the wine, the resurrection, the body that is broken and shared. In the Middle Ages, he was the wild one in the woods, the spirit in the festival, the laughter beneath the fasting. In the Renaissance, he bloomed again, in theater, in music, in every canvas dripping with forbidden pleasure. And today, he lives still. Every time someone dances like no one's watching, every time someone laughs until they cry, every time someone breaks down, only to rise stronger, Dionysus is there. He doesn't wear a crown anymore. He wears headphones, tattooed skin, messy hair, a voice trembling on stage. He isn't just remembered, he is felt.
In every nightclub that becomes a sanctuary, in every performance that strips the soul bare, in every ritual, ancient or modern, that dares to say, let go, be wild, be true. Because his mystery never ended. It simply changed form. His vines crept out of the temples and into the veins of culture, of art, of rebellion, of love without permission. He is the breath before the scream, the silence after the kiss, the madness that saves instead of destroys. Dionysus was not the god of rules. He was the god of the moment that breaks the rules and reveals something sacred beneath them. And that is why his story never truly ended. Because as long as we long for freedom, as long as we ache to feel something deeper, as long as the soul whispers for more, Dionysus lives. When myth becomes mirror and the god becomes you. So, now you know. This was never just the story of a god, but a map. A symbol written in flesh and fire, a cosmic riddle whispered into human veins. Dionysus was not created, he was remembered, not outside you, but within you. Because if you've ever craved something more, if you've ever stood at the edge of reason and wanted to leap, if you've ever felt a wildness in your chest that the world told you to silence, you've already met him. He is the part of you that refuses to die, the part that laughs in grief, the part that dances while bleeding, the part that kisses the unknown and says, I am not afraid. He is the God of those who break but do not shatter, who lose their minds only to find their souls. And he is here, still, waiting behind the curtain, behind the rules, behind the mask you wear in daylight. And when the time comes, when the old identity cracks, when your voice begins to tremble with truth, when the ground beneath you shifts, he will appear. Not with a thunderbolt, not with judgment, but with a glass in one hand and a mirror in the other. And he'll say, drink, see, become. And you will know that madness was never your enemy. It was the bridge. That ecstasy was never indulgence, it was the medicine. That this life, this wild, raw, holy life, was never meant to be tamed, only lived. So let the world call you mad. Let them call you lost. Let them misunderstand your joy. Because you are not here to be understood. You are here to awaken. And Dionysus is your companion, your laughter in the dark, your song in the storm, your truth beneath the skin. His story is not finished. It continues in you. And when the grapes are crushed, and the heart breaks open, and the fire burns away the mask, only then does the real dance begin. If this story stirred something inside you, a memory, a feeling, a question too deep for words, then you are already part of the mystery. Like, share,
and subscribe to join our mythic journey through gods, symbols, and the hidden truths of the soul. Every video is a ritual, every tale is a mirror, and every myth is you remembering yourself. Welcome to the Madness Divine. Welcome to Greek Mythology Histories.